In today's show, I'm going to be sharing why I said yes 3 times to speak for free in public when I had no idea what the outcome would be. So many of you might think, well, why would you do that? I wouldn't do that. But there is method to my madness. And if you are a boomer woman who's looking to bring more visibility into your world because you are transitioning towards recognizing you've got decades of experience and you are actually an industry of one, then lean in because I've got a couple of things to share with you. So when we're talking about income, and particularly in terms of how we grew up through our decades, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties and beyond in terms of the world of work, depending on which end of the boomer arc that you're in. But it was like you have a job, and through that job, it pays you an income, and that's the way in which you are going to be able to, or we are able to kind of stack money. But our worlds have changed. We're living through that change. And for some of you, you might be feeling I'm more of an introvert, so I don't really want to be putting myself out there, even though we know the context of the world continues to change. But I have taken and continue to take a different route because we're living through the time where technology and AI really is shifting our worlds, and it can do so much of the kind of routine work that we are able to do. So how are we going to stand out? So let me take you back to March of this year. And from an astrological point of view, we were closing out winter and just about to move into spring. And it was the sun moving into Aries, which was actually on March the 21st of this year. It happens around about that time every year. The season of March, the season of Aries. So it's spring, it's freshness, something new. You're closing out an old world and you're opening the door to another. And I was literally along that journey. And there's a friend of mine called Sue, who's an older boomer. And one day we were in conversation and I said to her that I really want to utilize my tech background, particularly towards being an AI educator for baby boomers, because I am a baby boomer, I am a technologist, I did retrain starting in my 50s, and so it's AI for baby boomers by a baby boomer technologist, which is very unique to me. So as much as there is the online world that we all live into, the offline world still has so much value baked within it. So I was sharing this idea and intention and wanting to do more offline so I can build my presence offline. Anyway, she said, well, why don't you contact these 3 organizations? They're older people's organizations. They might be interested in what you're doing. So she gave me the name of 3 organizations, which I reached out to, and I did a cold email to them. So she didn't do a warm introduction, and I had no idea who these people were. But I reached out, I pitched them, told them who I am, etc., and what it is that I wanted to do. And 2 came back immediately and just said, we're now going to take this further. You know how organizations work. It's got to go through this committee, etc., etc. So fast forward to about May time, I heard back from them. So one was actually transitioning because one director was leaving, another was taking on. So you kind of get the gist of that. So they were settling themselves, and then committee meetings take place and they're every quarter. So you kind of get the picture. And the long story short was that 2 came back immediately and just said, yes, we'd love you to come and speak. So I went along to the first one, which was mid-June, and I spoke to an audience, a room full of strangers. They didn't know me, I didn't know them, and I didn't know anybody in the room, and I gave my first talk around demystifying AI for baby boomers and just giving that educative lens into where is technology now? And, before the rest of society kind of scrubs us out of the picture as if we're complete Luddites and we've never come across technology, we grew up with the likes of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all of the changing faces of technology. But where we are with AI, it's relatively new. After I spoke, so I gave out some business cards, people wanted to get in contact, and somebody did. Somebody in the audience called me later on, that day in the early evening and introduced herself. She said, I was in your audience and I'm the vice chair of a residents association. I'd love you to come and speak to our residents. Her name is Bola and she's 85 years old. Just incredible. So we have one of our elders who's actually part of the silent generation, who's sitting in the audience and really liked what I had to say. So that is an indication of how visibility compounds first. And that's one of the messages that I want you to take away. She's in the audience. She likes what I have to say. She sees the value in what I'm sharing. And as a result of that, she invites me now to speak to her audiences. And that was booked for the end of July. And so over a 6-week period, I did 3 talks because the other organization that responded back to me immediately, I spoke around about the first week of July. So as I say, over a 6-week period, I showed up to cold audiences, smaller audiences, but audiences with the right people in them. And so this gets rid of this notion as to we always have to be on social media. It has its place and we can't ignore it. But going offline really does have value. And the leverage that I got wasn't immediate income. And some of you might be wanting immediate income. I'm not saying I don't want immediate income, but what I'm doing is planting this seed of visibility, expertise, and building trust in real time. And these are valuable assets. So what happened after that? The first organization that I spoke at, the chair, who's an 89-year-old and who's still an activist, incredible, inspirational. She and I now are in an active, ongoing conversation with regards to how my skills, my knowledge, and my insights could be used for something that she's involved in. So that's one really powerful outcome. They also wrote an amazing testimonial. The second organization that I spoke at in early July, they did a video testimonial, which was amazing. And they also published it in their online newsletter. So for those who were not at the talk, they got an insight and the photographs were taken. And then at the third organization, where the 85-year-old vice chair of this residents association, she did a video testimonial. And then somebody who was in the audience did a video testimonial. So this is the leverage that I gained by putting myself out there and leading with this idea of being visible and being visible around expertise, knowledge, insights that can help another audience. And I'm sharing this with you because you are a boomer woman who currently, if you had to raise your hand, could you retire tomorrow? And the answer would be a definitive no. But you're sitting on knowledge and skills that cannot be overlooked. And so instead of just thinking in one way about just gaining income, which obviously is very valuable, but what you're also doing is planting these seeds of trust. As a result of me speaking at the third organization, the one that was at the end of July, for the woman who was in the audience, the 85-year-old, what that has now led to is that I was invited to submit a proposal of a microservice, and that is still under consideration. So there were so many wins by putting myself out there. And I'd capped it. It's like, I'm going to do 3 free talks. And what I've gained back is I've got 3 testimonials. I have a micro proposal, a micro service that is under consideration. But then on top of that, my speaking events have now been publicized in the respective online newsletters. So I've been written about in 2 of them, and one has photographs and the other one doesn't. So really amazing outcomes that build leverage. And so that's why I'm sharing it with you. I'm sharing this story of my own lived experience, recent experiences that I'm actively living through, as an offering to you as to, in these times of flux and change, how can you bring visibility to who you are? Now, I'm just going to widen the lens of all of this because, yes, I've had some personal wins from this, which is great. But actually, there's context to all of this because earlier this year, the planet, from an astrological lens, the planet Saturn has moved into Aries and will be there up until April 2028. So we've still got about 2.5 years left of this transit. And it's a major transit that actually speaks to all of us. And where we have Saturn, a lot of people fear Saturn in terms of, it's the teacher, it's the disciplinarian, it's where we have restrictions and harshness and lessons to be learned. Well, there's nothing wrong in learning lessons. And as we've aged through the decades, we're in our 60s and 70s and even in our 80s and beyond, the lessons become more refined. And actually, we can be leaning into what Saturn has to offer. Because Saturn in Aries is calling for us to bring our authority to the world, to the public. And the invitation extends to, how can we show up with our own sense of self-leadership? Aries, Aries is pioneering. Aries wants to lead the way. And Saturn is saying, okay, you're an authority figure and a self-defined authority figure, that you have data to prove. And the data here, as we know, is our, lived experiences, professional life, talent, skills, wisdom, etc. Outcomes, successes, all of that. All of that is part of our invisible portfolio. And wherever Saturn shows up in an astrological chart in terms of the place, the house, and the sign, instead of running away and fearing the lessons that Saturn can teach us, wherever Saturn is in the chart, whether it's in your own astrological chart or whether it's in a transit chart, solar return chart, it's about leaning into what is that sign and house asking you to become. So therefore, Saturn in Aries, even though it's in its fall position, meaning that it's in the sign opposite where it is exalted in Libra, so it struggles. But it's for us to take up the mantle of this struggle in order to bring visibility to our lives. So even if you are the most introverted person, where your toes are curling as I'm sharing this, but also I want you to use the pressure and the frustration that may come from the Saturn and Aries placement to lean into, how can I become more visible? And actually, how can I become more visible in arenas where the algorithm is not dictating who sees you? And so for me, from these lived experiences, it's about being in front of the right audiences, even if it's a handful of people. It's in smaller rooms, smaller environments, because you never know. It could just take one person in that room, like my own lived experience. I spoke on the 15th of June. There's this woman, Bola, 85 years old, loving everything that I'm sharing, and then reaches out to me to say, come, love you to come and speak at ours. And then from there, invited to submit a proposal that's been, considered elsewhere. And I'm sharing this with you because this pressure to galvanize financing to take us through what can be our more extended life, together with this sense of there's pressure, the time is ticking. We've got more life behind us than we have ahead of us. And for me, that's not a frightening thing, but it's a realization, if not now, when, for those of you who struggle with feeling stuck. The question is, if not now for you, when? And it's about not waiting for somebody else to give you the permission. Saturn in Aries, but also that inner voice that keeps calling you. You know the time is right. There is nobody who's going to give you the permission. It's about you striking out and finding ways whereby you can begin to bring visibility. And just over the last couple of months, there's evidence of me doing what I'm doing in a public space with great testimonials and PR. Yeah, these organizations have written about me, and with a view to a microservice possibly being commissioned. All because of taking courageous steps, and they don't have to be giant steps. It's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm going to become this international speaker, and it's all going to happen by the end of the year before we step into 2027. But it is about taking one step, one action. For me, I had a conversation. Then the action was about emailing a cold prospect. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. There was no warm introduction. But then this story has unfolded. And that's what I'm inviting you into. And if you're unsure as to, well, what could be the thing, what could be your area of expertise, what could be your area of knowledge that could form the basis of a cold email, for example, or a cold conversation, then I'm going to invite you to download my free audio guide, which is about identifying 3 gold mines that lay within your life experiences. So check that out in the link below. And so you can download that. It's completely free. And if you're someone who you have a sense of, okay, I think I know what I want to speak about. I think I know how, visibility, how I can bring visibility to me because of these areas. But you want a bridging strategy and a plan to take you through from where you are to where you could be, which could be your first talk. Then book in for a VIP session, 2 dynamic hours with me, who I will be able to leverage my own extensive strategy, tactics, insights, practices, and methodologies that can help you. So I'd love to hear, now that we have Saturn in Aries, and if you're in your 60s, you've been through your second Saturn return. And if you're approaching 60, you're from in the region of 58 to 60-ish, then you're approaching your second Saturn return. And you're just slightly behind us at the tail end of the boomers, who's moving towards retirement age. We've got a question mark as to when that will actually happen. But we're moving towards it. And if you need guidance regarding moving you from that position of fear, then book in a session with me. As I said, there are VIP sessions, 2-hour, very dynamic VIP sessions. Or if you're at the earliest stage, you want to try and work out what's happening, that you download the free guide. And if you have a kind of penchant for wanting to know more about astrology and how is Saturn showing up in your chart, and how could you use it over the next 2 years until April 2028. Then book in for an Astro Peak Power Hour session with me. The link is below this video. Now, I'm wishing you well on your journey from slight frustration or discomfort for being visible through to, could these be the first tentative steps to your own self-leadership, so you become the hero of your story as a boomer woman who's moving towards building her industry of one? Look forward to hearing how you're going to be working with anything that I've mentioned here. Put your comments in the comment box below. Thank you to everyone who is joining me as I've rebooted my channel here at The Smart Years, which is focused on boomer women who are looking to become industries of one. Stay well. If you're new here, my name is Bybreen Samuels, and I am a proactive baby boomer who is looking to bring visibility and aid you on your journey to this phase of greatness. Stay well, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.